They say family is where you are safest, but what if the people you trusted most were silently destroying you? I bought my parents a house, pouring years of work into a roof I thought would shelter us all. Yet when they held a grand housewarming party, I wasn't even invited. I showed up anyway, only to hear, "You bought it, but it's ours now." My heart shattered, but I stayed silent because what they didn't know was that I had already set the stage for a revelation that would tear their perfect image apart in front of everyone. It was always the same sound, the shrill ring of my phone at an ungodly hour. That night, it was 2:07 a.m. I jolted awake, the screen lighting up with one name, Mom. My heart clenched. Calls this late were never good news. I swiped to answer, my voice still hoarse. "Emily, you have to help us. It's your father. He's not breathing well. We need money for the emergency hospital admission right now," she sobbed, her words tumbling out so fast they barely made sense. My chest tightened, panic rushing in. I didn't question her. I never did. "I'll transfer it right away," I whispered, fumbling with the banking app, my hands trembling. Within minutes, several $1,000s were gone from my account and into hers. Relief settled in my chest for a brief moment, imagining my father being saved by what I had just given up. But sleep didn't return. I lay awake in the dark, replaying her cries in my head, the urgency, the desperation. I told myself I'd call the hospital in the morning, just to make sure everything was okay. Yet when morning came, there was no hospital bill, no mention of Dad being admitted. Instead, an email pinged into my inbox, a digital receipt titled "Deposit New House." I stared at the words, reading them over and over until they blurred. My heart sank as the realization hit. The money I had sent to save my father's life hadn't gone to any hospital. It had gone to a house, their house, and I wasn't even consulted. I wanted to believe it was just a mistake, but deep down, I knew better. It wasn't the first time my family had blurred the line between help and exploitation. It wasn't the first time I had given and they had taken without a second thought. But this felt different, colder, more deliberate. The truth is, there had been signs all along, red flags waving in front of me, and I had chosen to ignore them because they were my family. There was the group chat I discovered by accident when my sister left her phone on the table one Thanksgiving. I'd seen a notification pop up, family chat. I wasn't in it. Later, when I asked about it, they laughed it off, saying it was just for planning surprises. Somehow, I never got surprised. Then there was the bank account. For years, my mother had convinced me to let her help manage my finances. "You're so busy with work, sweetheart. Let me handle the boring stuff," she said. I thought it was an act of care, but looking back, it was a leash, one I never noticed tightening until I could barely breathe without asking permission. And still, I excused it. I told myself, that's just family. They love you. They just don't show it the way you want. The final nudge came from someone outside the family. A close friend sent me a TikTok one afternoon, a silly-looking video titled, "7 Signs Your Family is Using You." I laughed as I tapped play, rolling my eyes at the dramatic voiceover. But as each sign flashed on the screen, financial manipulation, emotional blackmail, secret groups, guilt-tripping, I felt my smile fading. One by one, they matched my life too closely. At the end, the narrator said, "If this feels familiar, you're not imagining it. It's real. Get out before they take everything." I had scoffed, closed the app, and told myself it was just internet nonsense. Yet the words stuck, needling at the back of my mind, resurfacing now as I stared at the proof in front of me, the deposit receipt. What would you do if you found out your family was building a life with your money, while carefully cutting you out of it? What would you do if you realized the people you trusted most saw you not as a daughter, but as a wallet with a heartbeat? I thought about calling my mother right then, demanding an explanation, but I already knew how that would go. She'd cry, play the victim, twist the truth, until I felt guilty for even asking. She'd say, "Emily, don't you want your parents to have a safe place? Don't you love us?" And as always, I'd cave, but this time felt heavier, sharper. For the first time, the guilt didn't swallow me whole. For the first time, I felt something else, stirring beneath the hurt, anger. Still, I wasn't ready to act, not yet. Instead, I sat there in the silence of my apartment, clutching the receipt like it was both evidence and a curse. The question echoed in my mind, louder than ever, am I their daughter or just their investment? Somewhere deep inside, I knew this was only the beginning. And the worst part hadn't even happened yet. It happened on a Sunday afternoon, the kind of lazy day when I usually scrolled through social media to numb the ache of my routine. That's when I saw it. A bright Instagram story flashing across my feed, posted by a distant cousin. My thumb froze. The video showed balloons, a cake shaped like a house, champagne glasses clinking together. Laughter filled the frame. The caption read, "Housewarming party for the best parents ever." I blinked hard, my pulse racing. The walls in the video, the wooden staircase, the windows, they were unmistakable. It was the house, my house, the one I had bought. I tapped to the next clip, and there they were, my parents, standing in the middle of the living room, beaming as though they had achieved something monumental. Friends and relatives surrounded them, showering them with congratulations. No one looked for me because I wasn't invited. Then came the sound that sliced through me like glass. My father's voice caught on the video, laughing. "She's just a wallet with legs. She bought it, but it's ours now." The guests chuckled. Some even raised their glasses in agreement. I sat frozen, the phone trembling in my hand. A sickness spread through my body. I wanted to believe I had misheard, that it was a cruel joke, but the replay left no room for doubt. To them, I wasn't a daughter. I was a resource. As the story continued, my stomach lurched again. Among the laughing faces was my younger cousin, Chloe. She clapped along, her smile wide, as if she had never known betrayal. I had always thought Chloe was different, less tangled in the family's games. Seeing her there felt like the final nail in the coffin of my denial. I put the phone down, pressing it hard against my chest, and for the first time in years, I broke. Tears poured unchecked, soaking into my pillow. I cried for the little girl who once thought her parents' approval was love, for the woman who had sacrificed so much to be nothing more than a disposable provider. Hours passed. At some point, I dragged out an old notebook, the one I had used as a teenager to vent my secrets. I opened to a blank page and wrote, "They do not love me. They love what I give. Today, I stopped being blind." My hand shook, ink blotting the paper, but the words felt like oxygen. For the first time, my pain had a place to live outside of me. By the time morning came, my tears had dried into a hard resolve. I couldn't keep playing the role of the compliant daughter. If I was to survive this, I had to change, I started small. I combed through my phone, downloading every text message from my parents and siblings. The requests, the guilt trips, the manipulative phrases, I cataloged them like evidence in a trial. Then I began recording calls, storing each one carefully. My nights became research sessions, reading about inheritance law, property rights, and the legality of recording conversations in my state. The anger in my chest began to take form, not wild, reckless anger, but sharp, focused, like a blade honed for precision. Still, I wasn't without moments of collapse. Sometimes, while copying down another manipulative message, I would stop, my vision blurring with tears. My heart begged me to believe they could change, that maybe this was all a misunderstanding. But then I would remember the laughter, the clinking glasses, and my father's voice saying, "She's just a wallet." One night, as I sorted through emails on my laptop, I stumbled on a folder synced from my mother's cloud account. It was hidden deep, mislabeled under something harmless. My curiosity pulled me in, and what I saw made my blood run cold. A scanned document filled the screen. Property transfer agreement. It was a draft contract, neatly typed, with my name at the top as the current owner, and my parents listed as the receiving party. I scrolled down, my breath quickening. It was unsigned, but everything was in place. They were planning to take the house officially, to erase me from the very thing I had built for them. But one detail snagged my attention. A line near the bottom, scratched out and retyped. It mentioned all family signatures required. And in the comments section, highlighted in red, was a note. One party refuses to sign, find another way. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding. Someone in my family wasn't playing along. Someone had pushed back. For the first time in days, a flicker of possibility sparked in me. Maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought. The discovery of the draft property transfer contract had shaken me, but it also lit a fire under me. I knew then that my family's betrayal was not just emotional manipulation. It was a calculated strategy. If they were playing a game, I had to learn the rules and play it better. I started digging. The folder I'd stumbled across in my mother's cloud account was just the beginning. Late at night, when the world was asleep, I combed through every digital trace I could find. And then I found it, a string of files under an innocuous name, travel plans. But inside were transaction histories, spreadsheets, and screenshots of wallets I didn't recognize. My eyes widened as I realized what I was looking at, cryptocurrency accounts. Large sums sat in these digital wallets, amounts that didn't align with my parents' modest incomes. There were deposits that matched suspiciously close to the amounts I had transferred over the years. But the twist came when I checked the withdrawals. The most recent transaction wasn't from my mother or father. It was from my brother. His name appeared in the notes, a sloppy oversight in what had otherwise been a carefully hidden operation. My heart pounded. So it wasn't just my parents. My brother was siphoning money too, pulling from a pot I hadn't even known existed. I scrolled further and found voice notes synced by mistake from my mother's phone. My hand shook as I clicked play. A muffled recording crackled through my speakers, my father's voice. "Once Emily signs, we'll move forward. Until then, keep her calm. She won't suspect a thing." Then my brother's laugh. "And when she signs, what then?" A pause. My mother's cold response. "Then she's out. We'll make sure she never sets foot in this house again." Another voice, faint but sharp. "Exactly." The moment it's done, we kick her out. She'll have nothing. The room seemed to spin around me. I had always feared they didn't value me, but hearing it laid out so plainly felt like a knife to the chest. They weren't just taking, they were planning to erase me. But in their arrogance, they had given me the weapon I needed. Their own words. I sat in silence, my laptop glowing in the dark. A part of me wanted to curl up, to cry until I couldn't breathe. But another part, stronger now, whispered, "Don't waste this, use it." The next morning, I began reaching out. I couldn't fight this alone anymore. The first step was legal. I booked a consultation with a lawyer who specialized in property disputes. She listened carefully as I laid out the details, her brows knitting tighter with every word. When I played the recording, she leaned back in her chair and exhaled. "You've got leverage," she said. "Don't let them push you into signing anything, and keep collecting." Next came finances. A colleague introduced me to a forensic accountant, someone who could trace every dollar that had vanished into crypto. He promised me a trail, no matter how carefully they thought they had hidden it. But the ally I didn't expect was Chloe, the same cousin I had seen clapping in the Instagram video. I avoided her calls at first, certain she was part of the scheme. But one night, she showed up at my apartment uninvited, her eyes swollen and red. "I didn't know they were using your money," she confessed, her voice trembling. "I thought you were in on it, but then they did the same thing to me. They promised to pay for my college tuition, and then they took everything. I had to drop out." Her words cracked something inside me. For a moment, the rage gave way to grief, not just for myself, but for her too. We sat together on my couch, crying until our throats ached. Two women, once pawns, finally seeing the board for what it was. In that shared silence, I realized something. My fight wasn't just mine. My family's poison had seeped into others' lives too. I wasn't the only one who had been robbed. What would you do if the very people who claimed to love you left scars, not just on you, but on those you cared about? Would you fight only for yourself, or for everyone they had crushed along the way? That question haunted me as Chloe and I began piecing together our stories, linking dates and numbers, creating a timeline of deceit. Every detail sharpened my resolve. The plan was growing, stronger, clearer, and impossible to ignore. But just as I felt a surge of control, a new shadow crept in. I had agreed to meet a journalist who ran a popular podcast on family betrayals, someone Chloe recommended. He might help me expose the truth, not just legally, but publicly. I arrived early at the cafe, laptop in my bag, recordings ready. The air buzzed with anticipation, a strange mix of fear and empowerment. I scanned the room, waiting for the journalist to arrive. That's when I saw him, my brother, sitting at the counter, pretending to scroll through his phone. My blood ran cold. The invitations had gone out weeks before. A second housewarming party, this time bigger, louder, and filled with every relative, friend, and neighbor my parents wanted to impress. The house sparkled under string lights. Laughter spilled through the open doors, and the smell of roasted meat filled the night air. They wanted a spectacle, and I was going to give them one. I walked up the driveway slowly, deliberately, my heels clicking against the pavement. Heads turned, some whispered, surprised to see me there. My parents' smiles froze when they spotted me, but I didn't falter. I stepped into the center of the room and lifted a glass from the table. "First, let me say congratulations," I began, my voice calm, almost gentle. "This house, it's beautiful, and I'm glad you've all gathered here tonight to celebrate." I raised the glass higher, offering a toast. The crowd relaxed, laughter returned. To them, it looked as if I had finally accepted my role, the obedient daughter, willing to swallow humiliation for peace. I sipped, then set the glass down. My fingers brushed against the small remote in my pocket. With a single press, the lights dimmed and the projector screen, hidden until now, lit up behind me. Gasps rippled through the crowd as images flickered across it. Screenshots of the secret group chats, emails detailing plans to transfer the property, and bank statements that traced every dollar of mine they had stolen. "Let's show everyone what family really looks like," I said, my voice sharper now. The room fell silent except for the audio recordings that began to play. My father's voice, "She's just a wallet with legs." My mother's cold reply, "When she signs, we'll make sure she never sets foot here again." The words echoed in the room, slicing through the fragile image of a happy family. A murmur swelled into chaos. Relatives stared, horrified. Neighbors exchanged shocked glances. My parents stammered, their faces drained of color. But I wasn't finished. I pulled out my phone, pressed one more button, and revealed the final twist. I was live streaming the entire event on TikTok. Over 100,000 people were watching in real time. Comments flooded the screen. Unbelievable. "This is abuse. Stay strong, Emily." For years, they had silenced me. Tonight, their silence was no longer possible. The first to break was my father. He slammed his hand against the table. "This is nonsense. She's manipulating all of you." My mother joined in, tears welling up as she cried, "She's always been unstable. She doesn't know what she's talking about." But the evidence was there, undeniable, glowing on the screen behind me. And the eyes of everyone they cared about were watching. Then came the eruption. My brother stormed across the room, his face twisted in rage. Before I could react, his hand struck my cheek with a sharp crack that silenced the crowd. Gasps rose all around us. My head snapped to the side, pain blooming hot across my skin. For a heartbeat, the world blurred. My knees trembled, and I thought I might fall. Then arms wrapped around me, Chloe's arms. She held me tight, her whisper fierce in my ear. "You're not alone anymore." That moment, raw and trembling, was my pause. The anger subsided into something deeper, a reminder that this wasn't just about revenge. It was about truth, survival, and reclaiming the part of me they had tried to erase. But the night wasn't over. The front door burst open, and 2 police officers stepped inside. The room erupted again in whispers and shock. My brother froze mid-rant, his fists still clenched. One officer stepped forward, his voice steady. "Miss Emily, are you ready to proceed?" Every eye turned to me. My parents' faces twisted in disbelief, as if they couldn't fathom what was happening. I stood straighter, my cheek still burning, and nodded. The officer looked at the crowd. "We've been informed about this situation for weeks. Miss Emily provided us with recordings and documentation. We were waiting for her signal." Gasps filled the air again, louder this time. My parents stumbled backward, the perfect image they had built for decades crumbling piece by piece. The livestream captured it all, the denials, the panic, the moment when the truth was no longer theirs to control. And as I stood there, surrounded by flashing cameras and whispering guests, I realized something. This was not the end. It was only the beginning. The weeks after the confrontation were a blur of court dates, paperwork, and endless questions from reporters. But through the exhaustion, one thing remained constant. The truth was finally out. The recordings, the financial evidence, the live stream, they had all built a case so solid that even my parents' theatrics couldn't undo it. The day of the ruling, I sat in the courtroom, my lawyer beside me. My parents were across the aisle, their faces pale, my brother shifting angrily in his seat. The judge read the decision clearly and without hesitation. The house was legally mine, without contest. My parents had no claim. A quiet gasp escaped me, though I tried to hold it in. After months of betrayal, lies, and humiliation, I had won. The house that symbolized my family's greed had been returned to me, not as a gift to them, but as justice for me. But the ruling wasn't the end. My parents' reputations crumbled almost overnight. Friends distanced themselves. Neighbors whispered. My brother faced a deeper reckoning. The forensic accountant had traced the crypto withdrawals back to him. And now he was under investigation for fraud. The dominoes fell quickly, one after another, each consequence more devastating than the last. For once, I wasn't the one losing, they were. Meanwhile, the internet roared. Clips from the livestream went viral, racking up millions of views. A Reddit thread on r/eta shot to the top, titled, "Parents threw a party in my house and told me it was theirs." I live-streamed the truth. Thousands of strangers weighed in, their comments pouring out like a chorus of support. "You're not the asshole, Emily. They are. Stay strong, we believe you." Justice served. For years, I had been silenced, doubting my own reality. Now the world not only saw the truth, they validated it. Still, the taste of victory was complicated. I had won the case, yes, but I was also mourning something intangible. The family I thought I had. The love I once believed in. Justice didn't erase the scars. After one particularly long day in court, my lawyer leaned across the table with a small, cautious smile. "There's someone who wants to meet you," she said. "She says she has something you'll want to see." My curiosity prickled, but also unease. "Who?" I asked. "She wouldn't give her name," my lawyer replied, "but she insists it's connected to your family." That night, we met in a quiet office. The woman who walked in was a stranger, older than me, her face lined with the kind of weariness I recognized instantly. She carried a thick folder under her arm. "I know you don't know me," she began softly, "but I know your parents." My chest tightened. "What do you mean?" "They did it to me too," she said, sliding the folder across the table. "They convinced me to invest in a business deal years ago, promised it would help the family. I lost everything." I opened the folder. Inside were contracts, emails, even checks with my parents' signatures. Her story mirrored mine almost exactly. Different circumstances, same manipulation. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I had thought my betrayal was unique, personal, but here was proof. I wasn't the only one. I was just one in a long line of victims. The realization cut deep, but it also brought clarity. My fight had never been about a single house, a single betrayal. My family's pattern stretched back years, touching more lives than I had imagined. "I thought I was alone," she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. I shook my head, swallowing the lump in my throat. "You're not. Not anymore." That night, back at my apartment, I pulled out my old journal again. I turned to a blank page, let the pen hover, and then began to write. "You are no longer a victim. You are not just surviving, you are reclaiming. The words flowed, steady and unshaken, each line lifting a weight I hadn't realized I still carried. Writing to myself felt like writing to every person my family had ever hurt. A promise that the cycle would stop here. For the first time in my life, I felt true satisfaction, not because I had destroyed them, but because I had refused to be destroyed by them. My victory wasn't just mine. It belonged to everyone who had ever been silenced, manipulated, erased. And I wasn't done yet. The court case had ended, the live stream had burned away. The mask my family had worn for years, and the internet had taken my side in a way I never could have imagined. But when the noise died down, when the reporters stopped calling and the neighbors finally turned their whispers elsewhere, I was left with the hardest part, deciding what came next. For the first time in my life, I had a choice. The first step was boundaries, real, unshakable boundaries. I blocked every phone number belonging to my parents, my brother, my sister. I deleted their emails, cut off their access to me on every platform. The house, though legally mine, felt haunted with their shadows, their voices echoing in every room. So I didn't move in, not yet. Instead, I rented it out and used the income to buy myself time and space. No contact. It sounded so simple, but each click of block made my heart ache. Even after everything, some small part of me still longed for a mother who called to check if I was eating, a father who cheered for me at my milestones, a brother who stood at my side instead of tearing me down. But those were fantasies. The reality was too poisonous. I threw myself into something new. When a journalist invited me to speak on his podcast about my story, I hesitated at first. But then I thought about Chloe, about the stranger who had shown me her ruined contracts, about all the women who had written messages of solidarity online. If my pain could help them, maybe it wasn't wasted. The first episode went live a month after the court ruling. My voice shook as I recounted what had happened, but I didn't hold back. Listeners wrote in from around the country. Some shared stories that mirrored mine almost word for word. Others said hearing me gave them the courage to confront their own toxic ties. Slowly, what had once been my shame transformed into a tool. My wounds became a map for others to escape. Then, one evening, while sorting through fan messages in my inbox, I froze. A new email appeared, the subject line reading simply, "I'm sorry." It was from my aunt, my mother's sister, someone who had always stood on my parents' side, dismissing my concerns, telling me to be patient and respect my parents no matter what. The message was short, almost clumsy. "I should have defended you. I should have seen what they were doing. I let fear guide me, and for that I am ashamed. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I believe you now." I read it 3 times before the tears came, not because it erased what had been done, but because it reminded me that truth had power. Even those who had once turned their backs could no longer deny it. I didn't reply. Instead, I sat at my desk, tears slipping down my cheeks, letting myself feel the weight of both grief and release. The more I spoke, the more doors opened. Invitations to conferences, panels, and talk shows began arriving. I was no longer just Emily, the daughter cast aside. I was Emily, the woman who had stood up, the one who refused to stay silent. My words resonated because they weren't just mine. They carried the echoes of countless others who had endured the same betrayal. With the settlement money secured, and my finances finally free from my family's grip, I made my next move. I invested carefully, guided by the financial advisor who had helped me trace the stolen money. Within a year, I bought a new apartment, a space that was entirely mine, free of their shadows. Standing in that empty living room, sunlight streaming across bare floors, I felt a peace I hadn't known in decades. This was home, truly mine. But peace wasn't enough. I wanted purpose. So I founded a nonprofit, a fund dedicated to supporting women escaping toxic families. We offered legal advice, emergency housing, financial literacy workshops. The first time we helped a young woman secure a restraining order against her abusive brother, I cried harder than I had in months. Because in her triumph, I saw my own rebirth reflected back. The work was heavy, but it filled me with something my family never had: pride. Not the pride of appearances, of fake smiles at crowded parties. Real pride. The kind that came from survival turned into strength. Months passed, seasons changed, my life grew quieter, steadier. One morning, I sat on my balcony with a steaming cup of coffee, the city below alive with the hum of a new day. The sun warmed my face, and for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for a phone call to shatter me. I let myself breathe. Truly breathe. I thought about the girl who once believed love meant sacrifice, who answered calls at 2 a.m. without question, who cried herself to sleep over people who never saw her as anything more than a resource. That girl had been buried, but in her place stood someone new, someone who had chosen herself. You might think the story ends here, with peace, with closure, with a sunrise that promises healing, but life is never so tidy. As I set my mug down, my laptop pinged with a new notification, an email. The subject line made my skin prickle. "We're not finished." I stared at it, the words burning into my eyes. No name, no sender I recognized, just the chilling promise that my past wasn't done with me. For a moment, the old fear threatened to rise. But then I straightened, exhaling slowly. Whatever came next, I was no longer the same Emily they thought they could control. And this time, I was ready.